hope that, this kind of helps. I know we can't bring her back or the damage that's been done to the other person, but I wish I could take it back every day.
I'm thankful. I'm thankful that God allowed me to experience you.
Last words Ivan Williams will never get to say to his longtime friend Gina Martin. Monday would have been her 37th birthday.
If you knew Gina, you loved her. There's nobody aside from the suspect who I could say met Gina and didn't love her.
Police say Martin and another male were targets. A white truck was already parked in the back. Inside was a man they knew.
He immediately confronts them on foot
and with a gun, striking both multiple times. The male escapes back inside. Martin is pronounced dead on scene.
This is her ex-fiancé.
Williams describes it as an act of domestic violence.
It's just been like a series of him harassing her. I know that for a fact. He's done it once when she was with me, like constantly calling her, trying to figure out where she was at.
And asked if he would be able to recover.
I don't think so, but in her memory, I'll try, because I know that's what she would want me to.
In Las Vegas, Nevada, what began as a broken relationship slowly turned into something far more dangerous than anyone expected. At the center of it all was a man who simply refused to accept that his relationship was over. His ex-fiancée had made her decision. She had moved on, emotionally and physically, choosing to start fresh with someone new. For her, it was a new beginning. For him, it was something he couldn't let go of. According to those close to the situation, tensions had been building for weeks. He had been calling, texting, and trying to find ways back into her life. But what stood out most was a conversation he had with her brother. It wasn't a normal conversation filled with regret or apologies. Instead, it carried a tone that felt unsettling. He told her brother that she needed to come back to him, that things weren't over, that she belonged with him. At first, it sounded like the kind of emotional plea people sometimes make after a breakup. But there was something different about it, something more intense, more serious. It wasn't just a request. It sounded like a demand. Her brother listened, unsure of how seriously to take it. Breakups often come with emotions running high, and sometimes people say things they don't truly mean. Still, the warning lingered in his mind longer than expected. Meanwhile, she continued her life, focused on moving forward. She believed the past was behind her, but what she didn't realize was that the situation was far from over. In the next chapter, we break down how the relationship turned toxic. Like, share, and subscribe before everything spiraled out of control. Their relationship had once seemed normal, even promising. Friends and family remembered moments where they appeared happy together, sharing laughter and building what looked like a future. But over time, subtle changes began to appear. What once felt like love slowly started to feel like control. He became increasingly possessive, questioning her decisions and wanting to know where she was at all times. At first, she tried to reassure him, believing it was just insecurity. But the behavior didn't stop. Instead, it intensified. Arguments became more frequent, often over small things that quickly escalated into something bigger. She began to feel trapped. The independence she once had started to disappear, replaced by constant pressure and emotional tension. Eventually, she reached a point where she knew something had to change. The relationship was no longer healthy, and staying would only make things worse. So she made a difficult decision. She ended it. For her, it was about reclaiming her peace and rebuilding her life. But for him, the breakup wasn't something he accepted. In his mind, the relationship wasn't truly over. He believed it was temporary, something that could still be fixed if he just tried hard enough. That belief became dangerous. Instead of moving on, he held on tighter. Every message, every call, every attempt to reconnect carried more urgency. And when he learned that she had started seeing someone else, everything changed. What had once been control was now turning into obsession. The next chapter reveals how her new relationship escalated everything. Like share and subscribe. After ending the relationship, she focused on rebuilding her life. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. She wanted peace, stability, and a sense of control she had slowly lost over time. Eventually, she met someone new, someone who treated her differently. He was calm, respectful, and supportive. Being around him felt safe. For the first time in a long time, she felt like herself again. But while she was moving forward, her ex was still stuck in the past. He kept watching from a distance, unable to accept that she had truly moved on. What hurt him the most wasn't just the breakup. It was the idea that someone else had taken his place. He began reaching out more frequently. At first it was messages asking to talk, then calls, then emotional pleas, but when those didn't work his tone started to change. There was frustration in his words, anger, desperation. He wanted answers. Why him? Why now? Why someone else? But she refused to go back. She made it clear that her decision was final. She had chosen a new path and she wasn't turning around. That rejection only made things worse. He started showing signs of obsession, tracking her movements, asking mutual friends about her, trying to stay connected in any way he could. The situation was becoming more intense, but from the outside, it still didn't seem like something that would lead to tragedy. People assumed it would fade with time. But it didn't. Because for him, letting go wasn't an option anymore. The next chapter aches you to the day everything changed. Like, share, and subscribe. The day began like any other. There were no immediate signs that anything was about to go wrong. Life continued as usual, routines unchanged, and nothing seemed out of place. She was focused on her new life, spending time with the man she had chosen to move forward with. For her, this chapter was about healing and starting over. But somewhere else, things were different. He had been thinking, planning, and holding onto emotions that had only grown stronger with time. The rejection, the loss of control, and the reality that she wasn't coming back had pushed him into a state of desperation. By the time their paths crossed again, the situation had already reached a breaking point. What happened next unfolded quickly. There was no long argument, no chance to de-escalate, just a moment where everything that had been building suddenly came to the surface. And in that moment, everything changed. The quiet normalcy of the day was shattered. What should have been just another day became something no one would ever forget. For those who later tried to understand what happened, it all came back to the same question. How did it get this far? But the truth was, the signs had been there all along, just not fully understood at the time. Next chapter reveals the immediate aftermath. Like, share, and subscribe. When everything unfolded, the silence didn't last long. Emergency calls were made, and within minutes, the area was filled with urgency. First responders arrived quickly, working to understand what had happened and secure the scene. What they walked into was something no one ever expects to face. The reality of the situation became clear almost immediately. What had once been a private conflict between individuals had now turned into a public tragedy. Neighbors, witnesses, and even those who barely knew the people involved were suddenly pulled into the situation, trying to make sense of what had just happened. For the families, the shock was overwhelming. Phone calls were made, news spread quickly, and with each passing moment, the weight of what had occurred became heavier. There were no easy explanations, no simple answers, just a growing realization that everything had changed forever. Investigators began their work right away. They started gathering evidence, speaking to witnesses, and piecing together the timeline. One detail quickly stood out: the earlier warning. That conversation with her brother, once dismissed as emotional frustration, now carried a much deeper meaning. It wasn't just a warning. It was a sign of what was coming. Looking back, it became clear that the situation had been escalating for far longer than anyone realized. And now there was no going back. Next chapter uncovers what investigators discovered. Like, share, and subscribe. As investigators dug deeper, they began to uncover a pattern. This wasn't something that happened without warning. There were clear signs of escalation, messages, calls, and behaviors that showed a progression from emotional distress to something far more serious. They reviewed communication records, tracking how often he reached out and what was being said. The tone of those messages told a story of someone who wasn't coping with the breakup in a healthy way. There was persistence, there was control, and eventually there was desperation. Witnesses provided additional insight. Friends and family described the relationship as something that had changed over time, becoming more intense and more difficult. What once seemed like love had turned into something else entirely. Something heavier, something dangerous. The earlier warning to her brother became a critical piece of the investigation. It showed intent, not necessarily in a legal sense at first, but in a way that helped explain the mindset behind everything that followed. For investigators, the goal was to understand not just what happened, but why. And the deeper they looked, the clearer it became that this situation had been building for weeks, if not longer. Nothing about it was truly sudden. It was the result of unresolved emotions, unchecked behavior, and a refusal to accept reality. Next chapter reveals the impact on those left behind. Like, share, and subscribe for the families involved. The hardest part wasn't just the loss, it was the questions that followed. Why did it happen? Could it have been prevented? Were there signs that should have been taken more seriously? Her family replayed everything in their minds. Conversations, warnings, small details that didn't seem important at the time but now felt significant. That phone call to her brother stood out more than anything else. It wasn't just a memory anymore. It was a moment they wished they had acted on differently. Grief mixed with confusion, creating a space where answers felt just out of reach. They wanted to understand how someone they once trusted could reach a point like this. Friends struggled too. Some remembered the early days of the relationship, when everything seemed normal. Others recalled moments when things felt off but not serious enough to raise alarm. Looking back, those moments felt different, more important. But hindsight doesn't change what happened. It only makes the reality harder to accept. For everyone involved, the emotional weight was overwhelming. This wasn't just a story on the news, it was real life, affecting real people who now had to find a way to move forward. Next chapter concludes the story. Like, share, and subscribe in the end. This story is about more than just what happened. It's about the warning signs. The moments that seem small at first but carry deeper meaning over time. The things people say, the way they act, and how emotions can escalate when they aren't handled properly. This wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a series of events, decisions, and behaviors that slowly built into something tragic. Situations like this remind us how important it is to take concerns seriously, to listen when something feels off, and to understand that emotional control, jealousy, and obsession can become dangerous if left unchecked. For those left behind, the focus now is on healing, remembering, and finding a way to move forward despite everything that has happened. Because while the past can't be changed, the lessons can still be learned. And sometimes, those lessons are the only thing that can help prevent something like this from happening again. For more true crime stories, like, share, and subscribe. Round Pushpin, where are you watching from?